Hello, gentles and ladymen, I'm Ulan Gaming, and today we are talking about Malta shipments. Now, I've done this kind of thing in the past with entire videos dedicated to things like Wignacourt and stuff like that, but today we're just going to take one video to talk about a whole bunch of shipments that either either are not worth their own entire video, but do deserve to be in one, or just to summarize things and then maybe go into more detail for a specific video on a specific card in the future. Now, I do have to apologize in advance. Due to some technical issues, I haven't gotten the all of the footage that I maybe would have liked for this kind of thing, and so some of this is like literally just PowerPoint, but a good chunk of it is still recording, so here we go. We're going to start off with talking about the 4 knight cards of Malta. We have those being the Knights of the Round Table, the Knights of Bodrum, the Knights of Rhodes, and the Knights of Malta. Each of these are hospitality shipments that give you variable amounts of hospitallers depending on depending on how many buildings you have of specific kinds. Knights, now they are all, Knights of the Round Table is 1 per TC, Knights of Bodrum is 1 per outpost, Knights of Rhodes is 3 per commandery, and Knights of Malta is 5 per fort. Now, all of these are useful, really all of them, except for one, and we're going to talk about the useless one first, and that is the Knights of Bodrum. Now, you might have expected that to be Knights of the Round Table, but I actually find some use for Knights of the Round Table, and I kind of like it. Knights of Bodrum, though, is first of all, the description is wrong. It's actually better than 1 Hospitaller per outpost. It's 1 Hospitaller per outpost and 1 Hospitaller per commandery. It is probably the most useless of all of the knight shipments. It does have a pretty high cap of 32 Hospitallers sent in one go if you have the extensive fortifications shipped, all 6 tongues shipped, and the Somali native tech that increases the build limit of outposts and commanderies by 4 each. You can get 18 outposts and 14 commanderies. Is this feasible in a real game? No, it's not. No, it's not at all. But it is a thing to make note of, that it's got a pretty high cap. Most likely, though, you're going to be wanting to send it in the 2nd age, because if you're going to send it in the 3rd age, then it's completely outclassed by Knights of Rhodes, and you're going to send it with maybe 5 outposts, up to 7 if you're really feeling generous, you know. I've tried a kind of build order where you just spam outposts and you ship the extensive fortifications card to get 14, and then ship 14 hospitallers, and it just doesn't work well because the outposts are fun and all, but you know, they're going to be burned down as much as they're being made, and there's also the matter of they take so long to construct that by the time you have 14 outposts, all your enemies are deep into H3 with 2 Valks, and it's just too slow, and it's not enough hospitallers to make up for the fact that it's too slow. If it was 2 per outpost in commandery, then it'd be a completely different story, but it's not. So here we are. The next one I'm going to talk about is Knights of the Round Table. Now, each of the Knights cards is available in a different age. Knights of the Round Table is available age 1, Bodrum is age 2, Rhodes is age 3, and Malta is age 4. Knights of the Round Table is an interesting one, as it's really as mentioned, it's a Hospitaller shipment in age 1. And it's a team card, which means it's a team Hospitaller card in age 1. And it provides 2% HP to the entire team's units instead of just you. Like, this card actually does quite a bit. Now, what I have in mind for the usefulness of this card is actually a little bit different. So, Hospitallers actually have a little bit of utility age 1. For one thing, they have the ability to pick up treasures. However, in exchange, they only have 10, I think, siege attack in age 1, and they have a negative multiplier against both settlers and heroes that dissipates upon reaching age 2, and their siege attack returns normal as well. So this shipment is either useful as like a super late game card when you're just like, here, everybody have a little bit of extra HP, and you know, you have like 4 town centers here, have 4 hospitallers, why not? However, my favorite way to use this card is if you are doing a sling strategy. Specifically, if you are doing a sling strategy as Malta being the slinger and sending somebody else like Haudenosaunee or India resources. In this regard, you know, they're going to be aging up at, 3 minutes, and they're going to be hitting age 2 at like 3 minutes and 20 seconds or whatever it is, whatever crazy thing they're doing. And you're going to want to send this as your first card because that provides 2 extra very powerful units to the army with plus 45 siege each, and plus 45 siege each, and more importantly, the boost to the unit HP in the rush just makes it that much harder for it to be destroyed by the town center. And the Malta Hospitallers, of course, have the deflection aura, allowing them to absorb 25% of the damage that the enemies would otherwise be doing to your units. So just think, by having this card and sending it, you're making your Haudenosaunee ally with his Town Destroyer rush, you're giving his Explorer 25% damage resistance. To everything, which just makes him 25% more sturdy and 25% more likely to burn down that DC before the enemies wise up and pull out all the stops to kill you. So there's some good utility here with Knights of the Round Table. It's just very niche and very circumstantial. It's more useful than Knights of Bodrum. That's the thing. That's the important thing. Alright, so now let's talk about probably the best one, which is the Knights of Rhodes, which everybody probably knows is the best one. It's 3 per commandery. It has an absolute maximum of 42 Hospitallers if all tongues are shipped, and all Somali native techs, and the Somali native tech is researched for 14 commanderies and 42 Hospitallers. It's a really funny thing to see 42 Hospitallers pop in a game. If you just try it out, it's so funny. Now, most likely you're not going to get 42 Hospitallers. That's a little silly. You're more likely to get like 12 to 15 when you send it with only 4 to 5 commanderies. But that's a huge upgrade because, you know, having 4 to 5 commanderies by the time you're like mid to the start of age 3, that's feasible. You know, having 15 outposts, on the other hand, having 14 outposts in a commandery, which is what you need to get 15, for the previous card, is so unfeasible, it's ridiculous. But, you know, 4 to 5 commanderies, you can do that. You know, that's no problem. And it gives you 12 to 15 Hospitallers for 4 to 5 commanderies, which is just huge when you compare the fact that a normal Age 3 Hospitaller shipment or Adopt shipment or Samurai shipment is going to give you 5. You're getting triple that, and not for very much investment. This is like the easiest card to use. This is the easiest card to use when it comes to just getting raw numbers and efficiency for your wood. It's extremely easy to use efficiently. It's available in Age 3, which is also great. It makes this card just great for timing pushes, general play in the Fortress Age, and more. It's a good card. Like, I would honestly run Knights of Rhodes in just a lot of decks. Now, the last one is Knights of Malta, which gives you 5 per fort. This is an absolute max of 30 Hospitallers, with the 1 fort, 2 fort, and fort construction cards sent, plus 1 built, and then the House of Wet and Native Tech for a total of 6 forts. This card is great for fast industrial strategies. I like to send 1 and 2 forts to Age 4, and then Age with the Logistician for the Fort Wagon, and then boom, you have 4 forts, and now you have 20 Hospitallers out. And the great thing is, you just did a fast industrial with 4 forts, and nobody ain't gonna be able to push into you then. It's pretty cool. The Knights of Malta is a great card for a fast industrial strategy. Now, realistically, in most standard games, you're not going to have enough forts to make this card valuable, but the fact that you can make an entire strategy around this card puts it head and heels way above the Knights of Bodrum, which is a card I deeply disrespect. So yeah, there you go. Now let's talk about Gunpowder Depots. I think this is the last card that I don't have footage for. Gunpowder Depots, so Gunpowder Mills gives you a Gunpowder Depot with this shipment and every future shipment. Depots cost 50 wood and 50 coin. Like, come on, man, you can just afford that. And they only take like 20 seconds to construct. Basically, this card adds 100 resources of value to every shipment, and it takes 6 shipments after the gunpowder mills before it breaks even. This is a bad card. This is a really, really bad card. Any kind of adds value to to all future shipments should be worth more than 100 resources. Even in Age 2, like maybe Age 1, they could be worth 100 resources, but they should not be valued at how many resources they give, but how many shipments it takes them to pay off. Take Spanish Gold, for example. The card has been nerfed to high hell. I think it only gives 300 coin per shipment now, right? But 300 coin per shipment takes 3 shipments in order to pay itself off, basically. This takes 6. And it should take about 3 to pay itself off as well, because you're paying itself off of 700 resources in Age 2 instead of 1,000 in Age 3. So you see where the disconnect is. You know, it takes double the amount of time to get less value than it takes other shipments. And like, I love the idea of depot wagons, but if this card wants to be like good and usable, it should ship you. It should either give you 2 depots per shipment, or it should give you 4 or 5 depots to start with, and then 1 depot in addition every shipment in the future. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the depot. Now, back to the main stuff. Back to the other shipments that I actually have footage for. Let's start with Flamethrowers, and just we'll talk about all like the unique unit upgrades that Malta has in general first. I know it's what a lot of you guys are probably looking to see. Now, the Flamethrowers is a great melee unit, melee ability for a unit that otherwise has 0 melee capabilities. The Fire Thrower does have a melee attack, however, unlike every other skirmisher unit in the entire game, it does not maintain its positive multipliers in melee, which means it just has, I think, like 12 attack and nothing else special about it. You know, a skirmisher might have like 8 attack in melee, but it would keep its 2 times multiplier for 16 against heavy infantry. Not so with the Fire Thrower, which makes them, but they do still maintain their half damage multiplier against melee cav, which makes them a unit that is particularly weak and vulnerable to cavalry in particular, but just melee in general, to a point where if you are desperate, you can absolutely just charge all your units into the charge all your musketeers into the Fire Throwers, and you might come out on top. Now, the Flamethrower gives you a charged ability that is used for melee attacks. It has not the craziest damage increase. You go from dealing 12 damage in a 1.5 second window to 5 siege damage at its base in Age 2 at 0.5 speed, which means you're doing 10 damage per 1.5, which is, you might think, less than the base attack, which it is, but it is also siege damage, so it gets around resistance, and most importantly, it has 4 area of effects. Now, this basically turns all of your Fire Throwers into, like, miniature Great Bombards in terms of splash level. 4 area of effect is fucking huge. And another big thing is that this Fire Thrower attack, it benefits from having like a good 10 range on it, which means that if you get a unit in melee, it's not just going to be that one unit that's shooting fire at you back, it's going to be everybody behind him as well that's shooting fire at you back. And in addition, it also maintains all of the positive skirmisher type multipliers that the Fire Thrower has with his range attack. So this is a great card, as it'll allow you to just roast pretty much anybody who comes near you trying to snare off an easy melee, and it really helps deal with one of their biggest weaknesses. Now, it does have a 30-second cooldown, however the attack itself runs for about 6 seconds or so. So you won't necessarily need all 30 seconds. What am I trying to say here? The attack is good for a lot, and your enemy is gonna be surely roasted, well done, to a point where they're well done by the time that you, by the time that your cooldown starts, and he's able to make another military to charge at you. So the 30-second window is a melee emergency button ability, and it does that job extremely well. Yeah, whereas there are situations where a single Hussar might take out like 10 fire throwers before he dies. With this, you know, everybody's gonna be able to roast everybody's gonna be able to roast that Hussar, and that Hussar is not going to live very long. He's still gonna kill maybe 1 or 2, but he won't kill like 10 like he did before. Dignitaries Towers, taken literally every deck. Synergy with Wignacourt, because it's great. Speaking of, I'm not going to talk about Wignacourt. I've already made an entire video for it, and you should watch that. But yeah, Dignitaries Towers ships 2 outposts, makes your outposts able to train all of your infantry, including fire throwers, which are not trained from the barracks, but from the artillery foundries. This creates a singular building where you can finally build fire throwers and heavy infantry in the same place, which is just fantastic. Fire Towers, on the other hand, is a card that I cannot recommend. So Fire Towers, it arrives fast, upgrades you to the frontier level on your on your towers. It's an H3 card, and then it gives you a Flamethrower attack that, at its base, does 60 base damage. 60 damage over 3 seconds in siege, and with 1 area of effect. It's pretty cool. The attack itself actually does kick ass. There is a problem with it though, and that's that this card is not available until H3, and the fire attack itself only has about 10 range, so it's really only able to burn people that are like within range to try to burn the tower itself. Now, I would be perfectly fine with this if it was available in H2, because in H2, you know, everybody needs to, cannons are not as readily available for most civilizations if they're not Sweden, so they kind of have to run in order to burn down the outpost. Now, if this, say, was available in H2, let's say it didn't arrive fast, it didn't upgrade the frontier, it didn't upgrade to frontier status, but let's say it did come with an outpost wagon, but the shipment costed like 200 wood. I would be fine with it, because you need a card that, like, to help you defend in an emergency when you know the enemy's rushing. You send this card, and now the enemy can't come within 10 range of a specific block, or they're all going to be burnt to shreds. But the problem is, because it's not available until H3, you send this card and you're thinking, great, well now they can't burn down all my stuff. Well, they don't need to, because they can just make a cannon or 2, and your entire plan is null and void, because, you know, a cannon ain't coming within 10 range of your tower. So Fire Towers, great card, would be better in H2. Wall guns, useless. This card is the one that gives you a whole bunch of, it gives you attack and range bonuses to your Sentinels, depending on if they're near walls. The problem is, it matters how many walls are close to them, instead of just being a static bonus, and it takes a shit metric fuck ton of walls in order to actually make it work, and you have to be really close to them because the radius is small. So wall guns, useless card. Heavy Fortifications, this is a card that pretty much every civilization has. I have it listed in here because it does have a little bit of an extra special bonus for Malta. Did you guys know that it activates the guard upgrade for fixed guns? Yeah, there you go. Like an extra, that's like an extra 600 points of value, like resources of value. So, you know, you're welcome. 2 forts, I love this card. It's just 2 forts. You get 2 fort wagons. It's in H4, but you get 2 fort wagons. Most other civilizations only get 1 other fort wagon in H4, and Malta gets 2. It's a great card. You should use it. You know, it's like just better than Kuzakino Fortifications for USA in H4. Which allows them to build two extra fort wagons at half the cost. This is just 2 extra fort wagons. It's great. There's nothing wrong with that. You can take a huge part of the map, or you can take one tiny part of the map to a point where nobody will ever challenge it in their right mind. Alright, oh shit, I kind of forgot I was going to cover, like, the special unit upgrades first. Alright, we'll go over them now, and they're pretty much all I have left to talk about today. Dignitaries, powerful range, it gives you, your Hospitaller's range resistance, and a super powerful charged action. The charged action has twice the attack of the, twice the standard attack of the Hospitaller. So by age 4, if you've sent all your upgrades, that will be, if in age 4, if you sent all your upgrades, I think they go from having 20 attack to 30 attack in their guard upgrade. So this is basically a 60 ranged attack option that also has all of its multipliers against cavalry, specifically all cavalry and not like hand cavalry. So this is a fantastic card. It gives your Hospitallers just so much usefulness and adds a range capability so they can kind of hit and run. There is one issue with it, though, and that is that the Dignitaries card, the charged action, the pistol attack, has a 1 minute cooldown, which is just insanely long. 1 minute is way too long of a cooldown. And because the Hospitallers always go to this as their first attack, you could have a situation where you will tell your units to kill a settler on their way to the town because it's like out too far, and all 15 of your Hospitallers fire their pistol into one villager that would have died to like 3 pistols. And, well, now you just lost all of your charged actions. So you have to be very careful with the Dignitaries card if you send it. You need to micro your units carefully. This can be mitigated by telling your units to attack well before they get within range, so that they only start shooting their pistols as they come within range, kind of one file at a time, you know? Or you can also tell them to attack move if they're, like, by an enemy's broadside and just hit, like, probably 3 units at once with their pistol charge attacks. You can be clever about it. It is definitely a thing that is not great about that. Is that the 1 minute cooldown just makes you have to be so incredibly careful with when you choose to use it. Alright, rockets. This is the Flamethrowers card, and it's like super good. This is a must-have if you are running Flamethrowers in Age 4. Now, the Flamethrowers is a card that you only want to send, that you only want to put in your deck if you are planning from the beginning to make lots of, if you're planning from the beginning to make lots of Flamethrowers. But Rockets is a card that you should put in your deck in case you ever feel like switching to Flamethrowers. Like, that's how good of a card this is. Now, it barely changes the overall DPS of Sentinels, because the rocket attack is more damaging, but it's also at 4 speed instead of 3 speed, and I think overall in the average DPS they're only getting like a little tiny bit of a boost from it. But the reason it's important is because in addition to that little tiny bit of extra DPS, it adds a whole bunch of extra range to your Sentinel, to your Flamethrower. It adds more splash, and it also, most importantly, it swaps their multiplier that they have against heavy infantry and makes it instead effective against all infantry. So this Rockets card is what makes your Flamethrower go from a Grenadier Skirmisher to a Grenadier Skirmisher that also outright wins because of multipliers instead of just damage and resistance against every other Skirmisher. Like, the Flamethrower already performed well against other Skirmishers, making it a beast, but now it demolishes them. And because the heavy infantry multiplier is affected by counter-infantry rifling, that also applies to the infantry multiplier as well once it gets swapped. So you can get a total of a 2.5 multiplier against all infantry, in addition to the multiplier against dragoons and stuff like that. Flamethrowers are just fantastic units, and Rockets is what really puts them over the edge. It's one of the most important cards for them in Age 4. Alright, now we're done talking about Rockets. Let's talk about Flintlock Rockets. Not to be mistaken for Rockets, Flintlock Rockets is the upgrade card for Sentinels. Flintlock Rockets adds 45% damage and HP to Sentinels, which kind of makes them actually, like, worth it as 2-pop units. It also adds 45% to their cost, but they're still very cheap for how many for how much raw stats you get. Lastly, it also adds a charged action that has less damage than the normal attack, but it does siege damage and it has a little bit of splash attached to it. Now, you might think that this is really good for taking out artillery, because, you know, artillery has 75% range resistance, so your normal shots would be doing only 25% of their damage, and these would only 25% of their damage. However, this is where you're wrong, because the charged action that does siege damage also has a 0.25 multiplier against artillery, so the attack actually does the exact same portion of damage to artillery as it does to your units, and because it's less base damage, it's even worse against artillery than your main attack. What this attack is actually used for is for dealing with skirmishers. This allows your sentinels to fight on relatively okayish terms for short periods of time against skirmishers. It has higher range than their other attack. They can fire out and have a huge burst of siege damage getting around the skirmishers' range resistance, and then they back off for a little bit, give themselves some time to recharge, maybe let a support unit like Hussars come in and finish the job and stuff like that. It also adds a very large amount of range to their siege attack, allowing them to siege, and allows them to siege by shooting their musket, which basically makes them able to hit and run buildings as opposed to having to stay still for the entirety of the 3 seconds, which is pretty valuable in of itself and turns the Sentinel from one of the worst sieging musketeers to one of the best sieging musketeers in the flip of the switch. It's pretty great. Yeah, I think that is all we're going to talk about for today. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. It's turned out to be a much longer video than I had anticipated, but you know, that's what I'm here for. So, have a great day. If there are any of these cards that you think I didn't cover in their entirety, or need a closer look or their own video, please let me know in the comments, or just say hi or chicken butt, and I will see you guys next time.
Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. This was, as ever, a ton of fun to make. If you enjoyed the video, please do consider subscribing. It really helps the channel out, and have a great day.